The overall objective of this unit is to impart knowledge on UN Convention of the Rights of Persons with Disabilities. What are the aims of this convention? How this convention aims to utilize information and communication technologies to promote accessibility principles of universal design and considerations to be taken into account for adapting universal design in practice. What the convention endeavors to do. As per Don Mackay, chairman of the committee that negotiated the treaty, is to elaborate in detail the rights of persons with disabilities and set out a code of implementation. The Convention on the Rights of Persons with Disability, known as CRPD, is the first international human rights treaty to place an obligation on state parties to focus on mechanisms for monitoring. The provision does not seek to replace international monitoring, however, but rather to complement the work of UN Committee on the Rights of Persons with Disabilities, whose mandate and functioning are set out in the Articles 34, 35, 36 and 37 of the CRPD and the optional protocol. The CRPD was opened for signature on 30th March 2007. It entered into force on 3rd May 2008. The CRPD expands the scope of existing human rights treaties and the treaty body system in several key ways. First, the concept of accessibility is further developed as a wide variety of disabilities and societal barriers are taken into account. Second, the principle of respect for difference and acceptance of persons with disabilities as a part of human diversity and humanity, as per Article 3, marks a generally positive approach towards persons with disabilities. Persons with disabilities have long been seen as passive recipients of aid, often reduced to impairment related health needs. The CRPD's right-based approach to disability implies that all people are active subjects with legal claims and that persons with disabilities need to participate in all spheres of society on an equal basis with their non-disabled peers. According to the rights-based approach to development as defined by the United Nations, development cooperation contributes to capacity development of duty bearers, that is, the states and their institutions acting with delegated authority to meet their obligations, and on the other hand of right holders, these are persons with disabilities, to claim their rights. Throughout this process, the following rights principles are applicable: equality and non-discrimination, participation and empowerment, transparency and accountability. Development cooperation, as described in Article 33, seeks to address the multiple barriers to the inclusion of persons with disabilities, physical, attitudinal and communicational barriers. As these barriers can be found in all sectors and at all levels, a rights-based approach to disability is relevant for programs in a variety of areas, including infrastructure, information and communication, health, education, employment, community living, economic development, and national or regional or local governance. In essence, the CRPD is a targeted response to an overlooked human rights and development challenge. About 15.3% of the world's population, or 1 billion persons, live with some form of disability. Persons with disabilities tend to be acutely vulnerable to exclusion. Persons with disabilities are disproportionately poor, and poor people are disproportionately disabled. Furthermore, there are estimated 150 billion children in the world with disabilities, about 4/5 of them in developing countries, and millions more live with parents or relatives with disabilities. No society can ignore such a massive number of people and leave them on their own. The CRPD is also a unified response to the fact that although pre-existing human rights conventions offer considerable potential to promote and protect the rights of persons with disabilities, this potential was not being tapped, particularly within the framework and efforts of global development initiatives. Persons with disabilities continued being denied their human rights and were kept on the margins of society in all parts of the world. In addition to these circumstances, persons with disabilities also felt that they have had very little to say in plans and programs that are supposedly provided for their welfare, for the improvement of their conditions only. The CRPD sets out the legal obligations on states to promote and protect the rights of persons with disabilities. Now, let us discuss the significance of information communication technology accessibility for persons with disabilities as per the CRPD. The significance of information communication technology accessibility for persons with disabilities is best described by the language found in paragraph 5 of the preamble of the CRPD, which recognizes the importance of accessibility to the physical, social, economic and cultural environment, to health and education, and to information and communication in enabling persons with disabilities to fully enjoy all human rights and fundamental freedoms. While the preamble clearly defines accessibility as an enabler for persons with disabilities to exercise their rights, Article 3F of the Convention also identifies accessibility as one of the 8 general principles. Article 9 is dedicated to accessibility and stipulates that to enable persons with disabilities to live independently and participate fully in all aspects of life, state parties shall take appropriate measures to ensure to persons with disabilities access on an equal basis with others to the physical environment, to transportation, to information and communications, including information and communications technologies and systems, and to other facilities and services open or provided to the public both in urban and rural areas. Furthermore, Article 2 describes reasonable accommodation and the lack thereof as discrimination. In the case of information and communication technologies, because many accessibility and assistive solutions are available and already implemented, it can be inferred that the CRPD dispositions on reasonable accommodation apply in most cases. For example, an inaccessible website may not allow persons with disabilities to obtain information or use a service on an equal basis with others. Yet, the methods to create accessible websites are well documented and, if implemented correctly, do not cost more nor constitute a disproportionate or undue burden. Countries that join in the convention engage themselves to develop and carry out policies, laws and administrative measures for securing the rights recognized in the convention and abolish laws, regulations, customs and practices that constitute discrimination as per the Article 4. Article 8 says that as a change of perceptions is essential to improve the situation of persons with disabilities, ratifying countries are to combat stereotypes and prejudices and promote awareness of the capabilities of persons with disabilities. Countries are to guarantee that persons with disabilities enjoy their inherent right to life on an equal basis with others as per the Article 10, and Article 6 ensures that the equal rights and advancement of women and girls with disabilities, while Article 7 protects children with disabilities. Children with disabilities shall have equal rights, shall not be separated from their parents against their will, except when the authorities determine that this is in the child's best interests, and in no case shall be separated from their parents on the basis of a disability of either the child or the parents, as per the Article 23. Article 5 binds countries to recognize that all persons are equal before the law, to prohibit discrimination on the basis of disability and guarantee equal legal protection. Countries are to ensure the equal right to own and inherit property, to control financial affairs and to have equal access to bank loans, credit and mortgages as per the Article 12. Article 3 says that the country should ensure access to justice on an equal basis with others, and the countries should make sure that persons with disabilities enjoy the right to liberty and security and are not deprived of their liberty unlawfully or arbitrarily as per the Article 14. Countries must protect the physical and mental integrity of persons with disabilities just as for everyone else as per the Article 17. Article 15 guarantees freedom from torture and from cruel, inhuman or degrading treatment or punishment, and prohibit medical or scientific experiments without the consent of the persons concerned. Laws and administrative measures must guarantee freedom from exploitation, violence and abuse. In case of abuse, states shall promote the recovery, rehabilitation and reintegration of the victim and investigate the abuse as per the Article 16. Article 22 ensures that persons with disabilities are not to be subjected to arbitrary or illegal interference with their privacy, family, home, correspondence or communication. The privacy of their personal, health and rehabilitation information is to be protected like that of others. Persons with disabilities must be able to live independently, to be included in the community, to choose where and with whom to live, and to have access to in-home, residential and community support services as per the Article 19. Article 20 says that personal mobility and independence are to be fostered by facilitating affordable personal mobility, training in mobility skills, and access to mobility aids, devices, assistive technologies, and live assistance. Countries recognize the right to an adequate standard of living and social protection. This includes public housing, services, and assistance for disability related needs, as well as assistance with disability related expenses in case of poverty as per the Article 28. Countries are to promote access to information by providing information intended for the general public in accessible formats and technologies, by facilitating the use of braille, sign language and other forms of communication, and by encouraging the media and internet providers to make online information available in accessible formats as per the Article 21. Article 23 deals with discrimination relating to marriage, family and personal relations for persons with disabilities. Persons with disabilities shall have the equal opportunity to experience parenthood, to marry and to found a family, to decide on reproductive and family planning education and means, and to enjoy equal rights and responsibilities regarding guardianship, wardship, trusteeship and adoption of children. Persons with disabilities have the right to the highest attainable standard of health without discrimination on the basis of disability. They are to receive the same range, quality and standard of free or affordable health services as provided to other persons, receive those health services needed because of their disabilities, and not to be discriminated against in the provision of health insurance as per the Article 25. Article 26 says that to enable persons with disabilities to attain maximum independence and ability, countries are to provide comprehensive rehabilitation and habilitation services in the areas of health, employment and education. Countries are to ensure equal participation in political and public life, including the right to vote, to stand for elections and to hold office as per the Article 29. Article 30 says that countries are to promote participation in cultural life, recreation, leisure and sports by ensuring provision of television programs, films, theatre and cultural material in accessible formats, by making theatres, museums, cinemas and libraries accessible, and by guaranteeing that persons with disabilities have the opportunity to develop and utilize their creative potential not only for their own benefit but also for the enrichment of society. Countries are to ensure their participation in mainstream and disability specific sports. As per the Article 32, countries are to provide development assistance in efforts by developing countries to put into practice the convention. A committee on the rights of persons with disabilities made up of independent experts will receive periodic reports from state parties on progress made in the implementing the convention as per the Article 34 to 39. An 18 article optional protocol on communications allows individuals and groups to petition that committee once all national recourse procedures have been exhausted. Therefore, while the CRPD does not define accessibility at large as a right, it carries language which establishes the accessibility of information and communication technologies as an obligation of states, parties and society at large. The notion that discrimination occurs when an ICT based service is inaccessible is consistent with emerging jurisprudence in the United States and the United Kingdom. Inaccessible websites or inaccessible ATMs, for instance, do constitute discrimination against persons with disabilities because equal access is not provided where it could have been. The obligation to provide accessible information communication technology based products and services and ensure equal access is also reflected in many advanced policies and programs launched or promoted by state parties around the world. Examples of such programs include captioning or signing of television programs, which is implemented to some extent by 71% of the countries. Offering relay services for deaf and speech impaired users of telephony, which is implemented by 26% of the countries. Implementation of computer based assistive technologies in schools and universities. 52% of the countries have some level of implementation in this case. Providing accessible government websites, which is implemented by 45% of the countries, and accessible public electronic kiosks or ATMs deployed, which is implemented by 39% of the countries. Now, let us discuss how CRPD defines national accessibility standards and monitoring their implementation. Article 9.2 of the CRPD stipulates that state parties shall also take appropriate measures to develop, promulgate and monitor the implementation of minimum standards and guidelines for the accessibility of facilities and services open or provided to the public. While this disposition should apply to ICT based services provided to the public, it does not mention products, and the term facility cannot apply to information communication technologies. However, to the extent that country reporting guidelines for state parties to the CRPD do cover public procurement rules, the adoption by state parties of accessibility standards for ICT products would be expected. One of the issues in developing national information communication technology accessibility standards is the potential risk of involuntarily fragmenting the global market for accessible information communication technologies. This in turn can reduce the positive impact of global economies of scale, raising the cost of devices for persons with disabilities and creating new barriers in interoperability, especially in relation to the use of assistive technology. This may be the case, for example, of hearing compatibility standards with telephone handsets or the ability of screen readers to read web pages. It is therefore imperative that state parties adopt and promote international standards to the greatest extent possible. Most often at the country level, telecom regulatory authorities and information communication technology ministries are the logical center of expertise for information communication technology standards among government agencies. Of paramount importance because they affect broad audiences, which are mobile accessibility standards, web accessibility standards, fixed telephony accessibility standards, television accessibility standards and e-book standards. However, other areas of information communication technology accessibility which states parties must consider are ATMs and mobile payments, electronic voting machines, public transportation automated kiosks and electronic public signage. Now, let us see how CRPD attempts to promote assistive technologies. As specified by the CRPD, achieving equal access to information communication technologies requires promoting and supporting assistive technologies for persons with disabilities. Article 4.1 Section G requires state parties to undertake or promote research and development of and to promote the availability and use of new technologies, including information and communication technologies, mobility aids, devices, and assistive technologies suitable for persons with disabilities, giving priority to technologies at an affordable cost. Article 4.1 Section H also requires state parties to provide accessible information to persons with disabilities about mobility aids, devices and assistive technologies, including new technologies as well as other forms of assistance, support services and facilities. A majority of state parties have policies and programs promoting assistive technologies in the context of special education services at school and universities, workplace accommodation and rehabilitation services. Article 24 promotes inclusive education, which implies that regular schools and classrooms must accommodate students with disabilities. As a reference, 13% of the students in kindergarten to 12 in the United States live with a disability, of which 5% have learning disabilities. A vast majority of those students can benefit from computer based or tablet based applications to read, communicate, or obtain accessible textbooks. The benefits of assistive technologies are considerable as measured by students' achievements and completion of studies. Education is also a great place to teach young persons with disabilities how to design their own optimum information communication technology accessibility accommodations and how to request it outside school, including the workplace. Article 27 specifies that reasonable accommodation must be provided to persons with disabilities. With an increasingly large number of jobs requiring interaction with information communication technologies, making the appropriate assistive technologies available to employers and employees alike is a condition to ensuring equal employment opportunities for persons with disabilities. Large multinational companies and governments in various countries have developed good practices demonstrating the low costs and considerable benefits of promoting assistive technologies among their employees. When persons acquiring a disability during their lifetime, the likely opportunity to get familiar and trained to using assistive technologies will be in the context of a rehabilitation center or healthcare provider. Supporting those professionals is therefore a critical success factor in realizing the dispositions of the CRPD on the promotion of assistive technologies. Now, let us discuss the requirement for a dependable assistive technologies ecosystem. Critical to the proper deployment of assistive technologies are the training and support of users and the maintenance of technology. This area is covered by the CRPD in its Article 4.1I, which requires state parties to promote the training of professionals and staff working with persons with disabilities. Without proper support resources, the deployment of assistive technologies and their effective adoption by persons with disabilities can only fail. In fact, from an investment standpoint, the cost of services such as distribution, training, support and maintenance of assistive technologies is the largest expense to be considered. For example, even if an open source screen reader such as NVDA is available free of cost to the blind users of computers, minimum amounts of training and support are required to get a blind user who has never used a computer to become proficient with basic features and the commands of the screen reader and its interaction with various applications. This would even be more obvious in the case of a rehabilitation professional providing a customized solution with training and support to a person with paraplegia using alternative input methods including switches to use a computer. Given the above observations, helping the development of an adequate national assistive technologies ecosystem including skilled professional is an important objective for the state parties to the CRPD. This requires interministerial agency coordination and cooperation with the private sector and education institutions since, as indicated above, assistive technologies are primarily deployed in the context of education, the workplace and rehabilitation services as per the CRPD.